Good afternoon, everyone. I, Smile Sharma, District President of South Delhi, welcomes you all in the Connect for Green Earth Summit conducted by NYCI. The National Youth Council of India has organized this event to spread the awareness among the society about the growing air pollution. The pollutants present in the air is decreasing the quality of the air, due to which coronavirus is increasing every day, and people who are infected with the virus are dying because of the air pollution. The National Youth Council of India feels privileged to take cognizance of the current situation and is working in the direction to find the causes of the air pollution and the solution and implementation. Today, we have Advocate Sanjay K. Chadha and Advocate Jayant Bhatt who will enlighten us uh, with their thoughts on the topic, role of constitution rights for a healthy air and environment. So first we have with us Advocate Sanjay K. Chadha. He is one of the most reputed advocate of the country and represented their clients at Honorable Supreme Court of India and High Courts. He holds postgraduate degree in commerce from Sri Ram College of Commerce, and thereafter he did law from Campus Law Center, Delhi University. He is the counsel for various government and non-governmental organizations. His law firm is known as BSK Legal, which is one of the India's leading full-service law firms, having its office at New Delhi, Bombay, and Noida. The firm has an all India presence through its alliance with local councils at different locations from all states and union territories of India. Being a full service law firm, the firm is capable of providing legal services on all aspects of client businesses. The major divisions of the firm include arbitration, litigation and specialization in corporate criminal litigation, family law, consumer law, labor law compliances, and insurance. Advocate Sanjay is the regular contributor on national TV and print media and is passionate about sports and culture promotion. We are delighted to have you here with us, sir, and we hope that your knowledge will help us to have a clear understanding of the topic. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Smile. So kind of you for your kind introduction. Uh, Before going into the topic, I would like to appreciate the work done by NYCA, and the initiative which they have taken is really applaudable. I would also like to uh, say convey my best wishes to all the organizers, especially Devyanshi Mehta. She is the Secretary General of the Delhi chapter. And uh, so the work you are doing is wonderful. And I, before beginning the topic, would like to say here that I am always there for such causes. If at all, जिसे कहते हैं कि तन मन धन से I am there for you. Now, if we talk about the environment today, this is one of the most important and a critical subject which we all, the human community, humanity is required to discuss today. It is the need of the hour. As Smile was just saying, that in the period of Corona, it has the air pollution in Delhi has rather aggravated the entire scenario. I totally agree with you, Beta. But a very sad part is there that neither on the part of the government, I've been very blunt on it, nor we the sufferers, all the people, are much aware, doing anything great about it to stop it. Our governments are, I don't know what has happened. They have become non-functional as far as the environmental issues are concerned. It is our judiciary which time and again passing such orders where the court, where the governments are, forced to do something. I wanted to tell each one of you, my listeners, today, that it is not that this issue of environment has cropped up today. If we go to our Vedic history, in Vedas, Puranas, Upanishads, we have very categorically mentioned about the environment. We have got in history where we do the stuti of rivers. We perform various kind of prayers of these, various पेड़ पौधों की हम लोग प्रार्थना करते हैं, नदियों की हम लोग प्रार्थना करते हैं. Just see Ganga को we have given the status of God. That's what is our history. And we've been continuously, people के पेड़ की पूजा होती है, तुलसी की पूजा करते हैं. ऐसे there are a number of such things, and we have been working all through our history. We have seen that we are attached with the environment and we've been contributing positively. That is what was the history. But if I may say that after independence of India, the things are going worse day by day. The deterioration is going on. As far as aspect is concerned, as the topic today is also constitutional rights, as mentioned by Smiley, I would just quickly tell you what exactly the legal provision prior to British, rather during the British period, we saw few laws were made. Shore Nuisance Act 1853, if I'm not wrong. Oriental Gas Company Act was passed in 1857. Bengal Smoke Act 1905, and on the in Bombay also, Bombay Smoke Act was passed in 1912. IPC, Indian Penal Code 1860, which specifically provides the provision of nuisance, public nuisance, if you create something wrong in any way. So there is a criminal provision. This is pre-independence. So what is law? I always say so. And that law serves the society. So at that point of time in Bengal, in Bombay, there was a need of this particular law. So the law was passed to save the environment of Bombay at that point of time. So the situation was not that grim, so law was not there. Our constitution was, it came into existence in 1949, 26th November, 2 days before we celebrated Constitution Day. And finally, on 26th of January, 1950, it came into force. Constitution, we found that I will just very quickly touch up few issues, and then my objective today would be first tell you all what are the legal framework which is there and how Supreme Court, Honorable High Courts, the constitutional courts as we call them, they have passed various judgments for the environmental protection, if I may say so. So coming back to the Constitution, Article 14, which provides for right to equality, that everybody is equal. Everybody has an equal right to have a clean environment. Article 14 is very important. when we will come to the judgments, we'll see that Article 14 and Article 21 are the major contributor when these judgments were passed by the Honorable Supreme Court and High Courts, various High Courts. Article 21 I would like to mention here very specifically because it provides for right to life. What Supreme Court has said that it is not the right to life only, it is a right to live with human dignity. And what is human dignity? If I'm asked to breathe unclean or not clean air, my fundamental right to life is violated. Right to clean air is my fundamental right. Each one of us should know it. If government is not able to provide me this facility, what is the use of such government? So we will come to that. Supreme Court time and again has taken strict steps, taken various judgments are given and reiterated time and again that this is a fundamental right. Government, please give it to the citizens. These two fundamental articles. Directive Principle of State Policy, Part 4 of the Constitution, which gives the direction to the governments, both state and central governments have to, it is desired by the constitution makers and by the constitution itself that the government should adhere to these principles of constitution and follow them in making their policy for the betterment of the masses. Article 48 provides a specific article is provided in Directive Principle of State Policies that government should endeavor in making the policies in the direction where they should make such rules, regulations, etc. to protect the environment broadly. Similarly, fundamental duties are provided in Part 4A, Article 51. It specifies that it is the fundamental duty of a citizen to protect our environment. The entire ecosystem should be protected by us. Everybody, it is the duty, though it is not enforceable. Fundamental duties are not enforceable. But it is our moral duty, it is our human duty that we should adhere to these duties enshrined in our constitution. One more very important point I would like to touch base here is that India has, it is the one of the distinction that India has participated in almost all the international conventions. Without any exception, we've been so always active towards it. Our governments have always, the previous governments as well as the current government, has always participated in all the international conventions, treaties, even the conferences, whichever happens, we are there always. I can name a few, Montreal Convention on ozone layer, 87, Rio Convention is there, Stockholm, UN Stockholm, 1972, Rio Summit, Kyoto Summit, and number of summits were there. And we have participated in almost all the summits. That shows our commitment as far as the law is concerned, as far as the duty broadly is concerned. And we have not, stopped here. as the entire world, all the world governments, I would say, have passed various laws in their own countries. Similarly, our governments in our country have also passed various laws. 1972 Wildlife Protection Act. Then you can talk about 1974 Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act. Similarly, Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act, 1981. Forest Conservation Act was also passed in 1980. So that was an era when a lot of laws were being passed because it was needed by the society. We were seeing our governments, our policymakers were keeping an eye on it that yes, the environment is deteriorating. The condition, all the four aspects: air, noise, water, wildlife, forest, everything was deteriorating. So we side by passed the law. In the history of Indian environment, if we talk about, a big event happened. Sad day. Bhopal gas tragedy happened. Thousands of people lost their life. The biggest event, sad event, where the air pollution, if I may say so, it was an air pollution. The government was, the entire nation was shaken. Government was forced to form, looking into the scenario, government was forced to form a ministry in the year 1985. The specific dedicated ministry was, initially there was a ministry for basically ministry which was forest and environment. Now it is separately environmental ministry. It's phased away. So that shows that we were really aware of it and we tried, but as I said, major events, major steps were required, but we were taking, it is my own opinion that we were taking baby steps. A major law, which is called umbrella legislation as far as the environmental protection is concerned, 1986 Environmental Protection Act was passed. And this Environmental Protection Act basically covers, because this is the most fundamental of the all fundamental laws as far as the environmental protection is concerned. As I said, umbrella legislation. It was based on Stockholm Conference that I just mentioned, 1972. It covers all aspects: air, water, noise, wildlife, forest, everything is covered in this act. It gives a holistic approach. It gives an approach how the central government, how the state governments have to coordinate for improvement of the environment. So this shows that we all are aware, our policy makers, our academia is well aware of, I must say, the constitutional as well as the requirement of the society as far as environmental issues are concerned. We were aware. But despite that, I put a question to myself. We see that when so many legislations are there, why the environmental conditions are deteriorating every day? Why the graph is rising, the pollution is, look at as our organizers just mentioned that it is a right. I was seeing the poster in the postal, you have all rights for free air. And what is that index called? Air quality index. Just check it. where it should be somewhere around 50, below 50. It is 500. It touches 500. And if I may say, I might not be wrong on this saying that people they can't do anything. हताश है हम लोग. Because individually I can't do it. If I want to do something individually, I can't do much except the small, not smoking in the public and those things. Those laws have also come. So it has to have a holistic approach which only can be there once there is a political will of the politicians of the government. And I find it is lacking. But an important role is being played by our judiciary. I remember that decade, 2000 to 2010, that decade, these were the 25 years when judiciary has really shown a great judicial activism as far as the environment is concerned. And we have seen n number of judgments, that awakening which came after the Bhopal incidents, that continued for a greater period. And I feel even till today, judiciary is doing its own whatever it could have. CNG case 2002, where I remember when we used to, from Delhi University, I was in Delhi University. From Delhi University, if I have to come to South Delhi and I'm coming by bike, my entire face would have become black. That's the truth. You ask the people in the era, in that time, that is what used to happen. Taj Mahal case, and there was a lot of, those cases are very, very important, wherein the color of Taj Mahal was getting, it was getting pale. The judiciary came into force. Judiciary came and they decided many cases wherein they gave instructions, passed orders, imposed fine on the people. And I would like to touch base 3 concepts also, which were, by virtue of these judgments came into existence. That if you are polluting it by your industry, by any mode, then you should pay it. So polluter pays, this concept of polluter pays came into existence, and it was Indian Council of Enviro Legal versus Union of India, 1998 was that judgment. Similarly, one more development took place in addition to the polluter pay, if the theory was developed, because we have a very less time, within 5 minutes I'll finish off also. So that theory, which is very, very popular among the all the environmentalists, they know it, deep pocket theory. If the deeper the pocket, the deeper would be, the more you have to pay. So deep pocket theory, by virtue of various judgments, the Supreme Court gave those judgments to us. I remember the judgment of Vellore Citizen Welfare Forum versus Union of India. It not only talk about the polluter pay, it also talked about the cost of the entire pollution, which the damage is being made by the person, that damage is to be bared by him. And also the cost of restoring, if I may say so, is to be bared by the person. And a concept of, again, another concept which is also very, very important, the concept of sustainable development was also narrated and used by our judges. development has to take place, but it has to take place in harmony with environment. That's what is sustainable development. In the concept of sustainable development was taken by our constitution, our judiciary. I would now, so these all, so judiciary has, there was a time when there was a green bench every Friday. We used to call Justice Kuldeep Singh was a green judge. We used to call him green judge. A green bench used to sit every Friday. And number of MC Mehta, prominent lawyer, worked very hard and put in various issues before the Supreme Court, and those those judgments were passed by Honorable Supreme Court. Now, recently, I would also touch base, last but not the least, is during this Diwali's season, every time there's winter season, what happens in Delhi? From last 4 to 5 years, I'm seeing Supreme Court is giving guidelines for Diwali. Every year, Supreme Court says that we need an action plan. Every year, Supreme Court says that please advertise it extensively so that less or less crackers are burned. Crackers should be burned in open area. Is a specific designated place should be made by the municipality, MCD, NDMC. They should make a devoted places should be there. Supreme Court, by its own orders, have banned online sale of crackers also. Certified and green crackers were, they said that we should appreciate certified crackers, which emission less pollution. Green crackers. Nitrogen-rich crackers, which emit, I feel, 30% less pollution. The Supreme Court have very categorically said that schools, colleges, they should have some awareness programs. And what happened this year? NGT has passed an order and banned the bursting of crackers. But what we saw in Delhi, there was very less effect of that ban. A mix of vehicular, industrial, constructional, burning of farm residue, that is another issue. I don't know what is what the governments are doing. Why it is not totally stopped. On the other hand, we can use that farm residue to prepare paper. Why a strict plan strictly is not applied? If I may say that every year, as per the data given by WHO, every year 25 lakh people die because of air pollution alone. And when we all will awake, I don't know. In India, if I may say specifically, the pollutions, the air pollution is causing, it is, I think, 5th largest killer, any disease. So time is less. I want to exceed. My brother Jayant is there. So we need a long-term comprehensive plan. Need to spread awareness. I'm very happy that today this topic is taken by National Youth Organization. We need to monitor this air quality every time. A very strict implementation of the settled law. I discussed all those laws which are there. We have to implement these laws strictly. Otherwise, as Justice Kuldeep Singh said, that if we will not follow the sustainable development, the future generations, the generations which are going to come here, will not forgive us. So that's on that note, I would like to once again convey my deep regards to the organizers, and thank you very much for inviting me. Certainly, this is a very, very important topic, and I feel it is the need of hour that people like you and all of us have to really awaken up once again, and do our level best to raise such issue. And I would like to thank the organizers once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for the helpful insights. And we all will definitely take a step forward for the better and greener earth. Once again, I thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Next in the panel, we have Advocate Jayant Bhatt. He is an independent lawyer based out of New Delhi. He holds dual Masters of Law from New York University, USA, and National University of Singapore, and is a member of prestigious Supreme Court Bar Association and Delhi High Court Bar Association. His office caters to varied clients comprising of governmental and non-governmental bodies, multinational, financial institutions, and individuals in an array of matters. Mr. Bhatt, besides being a practicing advocate, he is also a prolific speaker at various platforms and is an individual with firm belief in greater societal goods. He has a keen interest in teaching and mentoring young minds and is an advisory board member to various organizations. He regularly features in news articles and columns and is also a writer and a thought leader. We are glad to have you at this summit, sir. I hope your thoughts and knowledge will help us to have a clear understanding on the role of constitutional rights which are made by the government for a safer environment. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sharma, and let me extend my vote of thanks also to Sanjay ji, my senior at bar, and also, I just heard last 10 minutes of his wonderful speech and discourse. I think that has left me with very limited grounds to cover, but I will still make an attempt to start from where my learned brother has left. Having said that, I think I must also extend my heartfelt gratitude to National Youth Council of India and Manthan for having us here for such an important topic. Environment is a topic which we all think about, but we hardly, take that to stand. I was in fact just driving back to work, and I was looking at, I was crossing the DND and I saw Yamuna, and I realized that when the lockdown happened this year, early, late March, and we're almost 9 months into lockdown, the first 2-3 months, Yamuna automatically cleaned itself. And while I was driving back today, I saw how, back to normal, so as to say the dirty and the polluted waters with toxic foams, have achieved normalcy. And it was very disheartening to see Yamuna River again, going back to the dirt in which we had left it in a pre-lockdown era. And that made me wonder, with so much laws around us, with so many tribunals and courts functioning 24/7, literally, we are still not able to control the pollutants which are being discharged. And I think as a first step, we need to ask ourselves, I think the right question is Constitution actually being honored? Are the laws which are framed in the Constitution, whether it be the Air Act, the Water Act, or any other environmental law, are they being actually executed and implemented? I think that's a larger question that the youth today, that the citizens today need to ask themselves. Why was it that when the lockdown happened, the nature itself started healing? And now that we are again back to achieving our normal day-to-day life, we see the river with which we use the water to drink, through our ROs and other mediums, is still being a very, very polluted medium. And somewhere or the other, it doesn't only affect us as people; it affects the younger, the youth, the kids who are young, the elderly. The health is being hampered on a day-to-day basis. So we, as I said, we need to ask ourselves the larger question: how can we still make it better? When we speak of the concept of sustainable development and environmental law, or as a concept of environmental jurisprudence, we must ask ourselves, how do we make the environment sustainable for the future generation? Because we are the stakeholder, and this principle was taught to me when I was in law school, and I'm talking about 15 years ago. And today also, when I'm talking about the same principle to you, Yamuna hasn't improved itself. or so many rivers across the country which are being polluted on a constant basis by industrial discharge, other harmful chemicals being put into the rivers. We have to find a cogent solution. That is something I think we need to think about by and large. Talking about the mandate of the topic today, the role of constitution and right for a safe environment, I must tell you that this is one of the fundamental rights which has been enshrined under Article 21 of our constitution, which is the right to a pollution-free environment, which was incorporated under the ambit of Article 21, mainly under the case of Subhash Kumar versus State of Bihar. It's a 1991 case of Honorable Supreme Court. The citation goes as 1991, 1 SCC, page number 598. So, in which the Supreme Court held, that Article 21 includes the right to a wholesome environment. It followed the liberal interpretation of the word life in the case of Rural Litigation and Entitlement Kendra versus State of Uttar Pradesh, which is a 1985 case of Supreme Court. And the other case, which is also discuss worthy, is Virender Kaur versus State of Haryana. It is a 1994 Supreme Court judgment where the Honorable Supreme Court held that the enjoyment of life and right to live with dignity not only includes the protection and preservation of the environment, but it is a very integral part of right to life, which is enunciated under Article 21. So far as the directive principles of state policy is concerned, the environmental mandate as per the Constitution is governed under Article 48A of the Constitution of India and Article 51A subclause G. What both these articles point towards us is the protection of the environment and laying down the principles of that the state needs to follow. Basically, three-pronged criteria. The first criteria is the obligation of the state to endeavor to protect and improve the environment. Thereafter, the role of the state to ensure that suitable measures are to be adopted for this obligation that they have to discharge. And number three is the effective steps being placed in the concurrent list. Now, the Supreme Court in the case of Sri Satyanarayana Pandey versus the state of West Bengal laid down that whenever a problem concerning ecology is brought before the courts have to consider Article 48A and Article 51AG in the matter, and it should not be left entirely to the government. As I said when I opened my remark, this evening regarding Yamuna River, so it's not just about the government or the court; it's also the duty of a common citizen, to take care of all these things. Further, in the case of rural litigation and entitlement Kendra versus State of Uttar Pradesh, and in the case of Indian Handicraft Emporium versus Union of India, it's a 2003 and 1985 judgments respectively. It was held by the Honorable Supreme Court that the reading of Article 21, Article 47, Article 48A, Article 51AG together, one has to take an active interest in protection of the environment and several questions, which require public interest in this matter. Now, we have all heard of the famous public interest litigator in India for environment, Mr. M.C. Mehta. I don't need to quote various M.C. Mehta judgments as we keep hearing about them, and reading them in our law schools and usual law discourse when it speaks to environment. But amongst a number of Mr. M.C. Mehta's case, one of the landmark cases is the 2002 judgment, which focused on the environmental jurisprudence and litigation, focusing on Article 39E, Article 47 and 48A, which is both the directive principle of state policy as we just discussed a few minutes ago. And it held that all these directive principles, they cast upon the government a duty to ensure the health of people, that we improve public health and we protect the environment. Furthermore, the Honorable Court in this matter had observed that adequate laws should be put in place. The administration should show concern about environment pollution, and thus, the Honorable Supreme Court took an active interest in the matter while referring to the level of air pollution in Delhi, which had increased to the extent of endanger. And this I'm telling you of 2002. When CNG had to be implemented, and this was one of the crucial judgment to take place. Now, fast forward to 2020, every day, we keep hearing things like the AQE or the level is going from worse to severe or severe to very, very poor. All these things you open a newspaper and you see. And it's extremely alarming. It's alarming because health issue, if you're polluting the environment, it's not just regular pollution, as my learned friend also, Mr. Chadda also pointed out. There are many toxic, industrial discharge are there, vehicle pollution is there, construction pollution is there. So we have to again find a way. How do we manage the human greed? And because everything stems out of it. The best example is again, as unfortunate as it is, but the COVID lockdown that we had for 3 months, we had absolutely clean air. We could see the sky in Delhi. We could see the stars in the night. So I think the question that begets, the answer that we need to ask is, if in those 3 months we are getting to see the nature in its purest form, being in national capital region of the country, what can be done? Today Delhi government has mandated the use of mask as mandatory, and if you violate the, if you flout the rule, you are put up with a fine, very very steep fine of rupees 2,000. So all those things, I don't know if in the longer run they can help in controlling a virus, or helping in a sustainable development to the environment. One incident that I remotely remember is this Art of Life Foundation, when they had, I think, done this huge gala event, I think about 2 or 4 years ago on the Yamuna banks. And there was a huge UN cry about it. I think NGT had taken some cognizance and they had put a steep fine. I don't know what the current status of the matter is, but that the whole event got a lot of media attention. People said that Yamuna Bank is already in a very very precarious position. Why is such a gala event is being organized or being hosted? What is the reason for that? And I think later, I think the matter has attained some sort of coitus, I would say. So I think as law students, as lawyers, as citizens who are stakeholder in the environmental well-being and the societal good, we must follow up, I think, with cases which are concerning the environment. We already have a body like NGT, which is looking into it. As Mr. Chadha also pointed out, there is a green bench in Honorable Supreme Court, which takes care of these matters. But then I think a thorough follow-up has to be done by a body. Maybe your youth council can take care of it and take the reins and realize and follow up with different courts as to what type of judgments or orders are being handed over to the authorities. That is one leg of the argument. The other bit of the solution, I think, that we have to focus on is, once these orders are passed, how is the administration acting to implement these orders? Because that is the major role, for the bureaucracy in the country. The courts have done their job. They will pass orders. They will pass their mandate through various judgments. But if we don't implement them properly, then we'll still be breathing the toxic air that we are breathing. We'll still be drinking the polluted water that we are drinking, and there will be no respite for the future generations to come, and which is really a shame, in the larger scheme of things. Now, other principles that I'll quickly discuss, I think Mr. Chadha has also touched them in his speech, are the rule of precautionary principle, which have been laid down in multiple cases, which basically talks about taking preventive action in the face of uncertainty, shifting the burden of proof to the proponents of the activity who are propagating pollution, exploring a wide range of alternatives to possibly harmful actions, and increasing public participation in decision making. Then there is a famous tort law principle that you must have studied if you're still in law school. It's a polluter pays principle and a deep pocket theory. And this principle was first recognized again in one of the MC Mehta cases, which is also popularly called the oleum gas leak case, or the Bhopal gas leak tragedy, which talks about absolute liability for harm caused to the environment, which extends not only to compensate the victims of pollution, but also the cost of restoring the environmental degradation. So the principle basically lays down that the polluter is liable to pay the cost to the individual sufferers, as well as to the cost of reversing to the damage that you're causing to the ecology. And the establishment of this principle in the MC Mehta case, lay the fact that there was a leak of a hazardous gas, as we are all aware, called oleum. And it emanated from the unit of Shriram Foods and Fertilizers Industries that has caused this irreparable damage to the public and environment back then. And the apex court had held that this industry was particularly liable. It was held liable to compensate the harm which it caused to the people of the region. The other case, which my friend also mentioned, is the Vellore Citizen Welfare Forum versus Union of India case, where the Honorable Apex Court held that the polluter's objective is to compensate the victim of pollution and also to restore the environmental degradation, which is a part of sustainable development. The last case under this principle that I would like to discuss is the case of Indian Council for Enviro-Legal Action versus Union of India. It's a 1996 judgment, where the central government, the power which are vested under Section 3 and Section 5 of the Environment Act of 86 was told to determine compensation for damaging the environment. The other doctrine that I must keep in front of you is the public trust doctrine, which mandates an affirmative action by the state to protect the common heritage of people who reside in natural resources. So basically what it means is that international jurisprudence, which has been laid down in the case of National Audubon Society versus the Supreme Court of Alpine County, It said that the position of the case was later affirmed in India in the intellectual forums Tirupati versus State of Andhra Pradesh in 2006, which says that this doctrine, uphold the doctrine which has already been laid down in the MC Mehta case, the public trust doctrine, which means the state has the bounden duty under the mandate of the constitution to protect the common heritage of people. Now, we have already discussed what are the various acts that already covered. We have the Water Act, we have the Air Act, we have the Environment Protection Act, which are exhaustive in nature and which governs the mandate of controlling and putting punitive measures against people who are polluting the environment. Now, tort law, as you are studying law school and in general, also plays a major role in looking after the environmental concerns. So in the case of environment protection, tort law, as we just discussed, polluter pays principle, deep pocket theory are the main theories which come into being, and they cover other issues relating to other act also and bind them together. Now the evolution of environment law and policy in our country are basically fourfold. We can go back to our pre-independence era before 1947. Then other environmental acts and policies were formulated post-independence after the Stockholm Conference, and a lot of environmental regulations were formulated from 1947 to 1972. Thereafter, after the Bhopal disaster happened and MC Mehta and other cases, and the jurisprudence kept evolving, then we saw a new era in the environmental jurisprudence from 72 to 84. And thereafter, the Bhopal gas tragedy and post 1998, we have seen a lot of environmental law litigation in the past 20 years or so, where the Honorable Supreme Court has come down heavily on the authorities and on the polluters to rectify their mistakes and to do whatever they can to keep a safe environment and to keep the concept of sustainable development for the generations to come. As per the 42nd Amendment of the Constitution, it was inserted with specific provision for environmental protection in the forms of directive principle of state policy, and this is what gave rise to Article 48A, as I mentioned in my opening remark. We have already discussed the multiple laws that is there. So I think I would just like to quickly now conclude my speech by saying that what we need to give, not just to ourselves, but to the generations to come, is a right and right to a safe environment. The substantive and the procedural right are already being overseen by our courts, which are very capable. But as I said, only orders and only judgments in themselves are not enough to regulate and to ensure that the public is protected. But we have to look after a mandate of policing. We have to look after how the bureaucracy can also chip in their role. We have to look out how the licenses are being handed over to the industries or to the factories or to the companies who are discharging massive industrial waste in the country. I think with today's day in technology, you have drone, you have CCTVs, you have so much of technological advancement that one can really utilize and try to put the culprit to task. But that will require very strong executive and bureaucratic will to make that happen. I think the judicial will has always been there, and as we just discussed, a lot of jurisprudence which has been laid down in the court in the past 50 odd years or so. We can't find any fault with our judicial system, but I think the judicial system at the end of the day and what the constitution mandates under the fundamental right and directive principles has to be regulated and carefully protected by the other two pillars of the our democracy, including, I would say, even the fourth pillar, the media. They should also be a little active in covering these news reports and following them up properly and bring them to a logical conclusion, so that we can preserve the environment that we live in, and we can, through the preservation and through the whole concept of sustainable development, give this safe environment to the generations to come. I think with this, I'll put a pause to my speech, and I will again extend my heartfelt gratitude to the National Youth Council of India and to Manthan, and along with my co-speaker, Mr. Chaddaji, for his valuable feedback and comments in the session today.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, actually, I just want to ask you your suggestions for adding to the Air Pollution Act.
Ma'am, the idea is this: you may amend as many acts as you want to, and amendment is something which keeps taking place on a regular basis. But it's something like this. Let me give an example. So, not directly environment related, but like, for example, I think a few years ago when Supreme Court or when the government comes to the circular saying that please do not burn firecrackers. let's see, that's I'm giving a very basic example. Then some people still tend to burn firecrackers. Now court has done its job. The law is there. The acts are there. But how do you ensure that you will catch hold of everybody when there is a ban on selling crackers, despite which people stock their stock themselves with all these crackers and other things, and they keep on busting. So I think the law is already there. What we need to devise is a mechanism how to control the public at large. And the other example I wanted to give you is the Supreme Court had, I think, a few years ago came out with this judgment where they said the liquor shops on the national highway, will not sell liquor. And I think there was an embargo which was put. But later, I think just the very next year, within a week, I think most of the national highways were converted into state highways and local streets or something like that. And the shops are still making businesses. So the idea is, if people have already found a way, the administration has already found a way not to honor a particular judgment or find it, then I think the judiciary will need to find a mechanism to have a quick revert and a rebuttal to these things. And as I said, we cannot pin all our hopes on judiciary. They are doing what they're doing. But then it becomes a role of policing and the administration and the people who are granting licenses to these business and other people in the country to ensure that the letter of the law is upheld.
Yes, sir, absolutely. Okay, so thank you so much, sir, for these wonderful insights. It's time we should take some actions to protect our Mother Earth from all the harmful things. And your thoughts have helped each one of us to think bigger and smarter in protecting the environment. Once again, I would like to thank Advocate Jayant Bhatt and Advocate Sanjay K. Chadha for giving their precious time and sharing their mindful and knowledgeable thoughts and views with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And I wish, it's all the best to your organization, both the organizations that they have started this kind of initiative. I feel it is the need of the hour. We all have to really, take some step. And once again, we have to tell the government that, look, this is our requirement. Please do it the way, as Jayanji has just said, the law is there. We need to see how it is implemented. The best examples he gave, that crackers you can't burn, one, the liquor shops, all that. Thank you very much. And it was very nice meeting you, Jayanji.
Lovely meeting you, sir. Lovely meeting you in person.
Thank you.
Virtually, but
yeah, we've been doing things together. But formally, I'm talking to you.
In fact, we have a common thread. We are still live, but Jap Sanjam speaks very highly of you. She has, I think, interned with you. She has also interned with me. So she's
all right.
Spoke very highly of you when she had come.
Thank you very much. And we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Right, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.